Leafs fall 3-2 in game two. Is panic starting to settle in as the Leafs head to Florida down 0-2 in the best of seven? We'll discuss that and recap game two today on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the May 5th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother, on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. If you're an everydayer who listens to the podcast, you know this, but if you're new to the show or a first-time listener or observer, Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from. Also up on YouTube for that video content. We put out new episodes each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. Well, Leafs fall 3-2 to the Panthers and now down 0-2 in the series. Dave, are you panicking yet or what?
I mean, it's funny because I'm trying to figure out if I'm panicking. I don't think I am, just because you see how they've been playing. They haven't been outplayed in the two games. It's just they're not able to overcome their mistakes, and that's maybe where the panic should be sitting in, is that they're giving away these games rather than winning. Like that's the part maybe where you can panic a little bit, is that Panthers have some confidence now they're going home, but I'm not in that panic mode yet. I don't know if there's something wrong with me right now. Just maybe maybe I'm just watching that game last night. The frustration just took away all the panic out of me. I don't know, but yeah, it's really hard for me to panic, even though they're down 2-0 in this series.
So that's interesting. So you'd say you're more frustrated than
Yeah,
panicked right now.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I rewatched that game start to finish because we're recording this in the morning, so I had some time to just go back and rewatch it. And it's just like you just throw your arms up in the air, right? Like rewatching some of the chances that didn't go in, and you just throw your arms up in the air, because it's just like 9 times out of 10, some of these chances that didn't go in will likely have gone in for this team. And like it's just hard to say like they played terribly, which they really didn't, aside for a few moments in the game. Like that's why I'm just really having a hard time panicking and going with the whole sky is falling sort of narrative right now.
Yeah, I'm a little more worried than you are. Like I wouldn't say I'm in complete absolute panic mode. But I am starting to get a little concerned here. Because the two things that have plagued Maple Leaf through two games so far here, one is the giveaways, as you noted, and uncharacteristic giveaways. Like
Mhm.
last night, when does Austin Matthews try to make that stupid cute little flip play and send it right into the belly of his opponent and a turnover at his own blue line? Like he's usually pretty good at breaking the puck out of his own zone. So something that was a strength of theirs has somehow become a bit of a weakness. Same thing with Nylander. His own blue line, kind of trips a little bit and causes a turnover, and the puck's in the back of the net. But also the other thing that is concerning me is we got a problem here with Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
We do got a problem here with this guy because he's turned the clock back, and this is 2 games in a row now where he has really come up big for his team, and we know what a hot goaltender can do, man. A hot goalie can bring you very far in this sport. We saw it happen with Carey Price a few years ago with Montreal, and it's looking like that could be the issue in this series. Is it's getting increasingly difficult to beat Bobrovsky, because you're right. Like the Maple Leafs, I thought outplayed Florida for most parts of that game. The second period was awful. We'll get to that.
Mhm.
But they got off to a pretty good start, right? I thought that they looked pretty good. They scored early. They got another goal on the power play. Everything was kind of looking pretty good. And then all of a sudden, Bobrovsky shuts it down and doesn't allow another goal the rest of the game. The Leafs were getting plenty of looks. They got lots of chances, especially in the third period. Couldn't beat Bobrovsky. And then when they did beat Bobrovsky, the worst luck possible, hit like 5 or 6 posts or crossbars throughout the night. So it was a combination of like just really, really poor luck and really, really stellar goaltending from Bob's and, some uncharacteristic giveaways there at the start of the second period. And they find themselves down 3-2. That's really kind of the game for Toronto.
Yeah, and like I understand the whole goalie narrative too, but like I was even looking at some of these chances they were getting. Too much one and done for me. Like you look at the first goal that the Leafs scored. Luke Shen gets that shot on net,
Yeah.
rebound comes out, and there's Kerfoot on the doorstep to put it past Bobrovsky, right? Like how many of these chances where he stops it or it goes off the post or something, and there's no one there to try to get the second or third chances, right? There's not like creating a little bit of chaos in front of the net. Like we were talking about that, how the Leafs need to do a better job of that. They certainly did. Like the chances they got were all in the slot. They're all in the high danger areas. But I'm wondering where are those second and third opportunities? Because Bobrovsky is making the tough first save. Try
Yeah.
having him make the tough second and third save on the same sequence. That's something that I feel like is missing a little bit. And you're looking back at even in that Montreal series, like I'm bring back that comparison to when Carey Price did pretty much the same thing to the Leafs a few years ago. Yeah, Carey Price was making amazing saves, but where were the second and third opportunities to make it tougher on the goalie, right? And capitalizing on mistakes. That's what the Florida's been doing. The Leafs really haven't been doing that much. Like they would get turnovers, but it would lead to nothing because the Leafs were they were getting too cute and not taking advantage and trying to catch them off guard. When players give up turnovers, you have to find a way to capitalize them by rushing up the play, right? Not just settling and waiting for things to develop. You have to be the one to kind of push the pace a little bit more and take advantage of those turnovers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think that the Leafs got to be just a little more assertive, especially in front of the net. Absolutely, and um, you do got to tip your cap a little bit, obviously, to the Florida Panthers, and their defensemen who are just doing a good job bodying Toronto and quickly getting to pucks and getting them out of harm's way so that they don't have those second and third opportunities. It's not like Bobrovsky's had elite rebound control. There have been rebounds that have skirted out in front of him and into the paint, but one of two things are happening: either the Florida Panthers are boxing out Toronto, or they're doing a pretty good job tying up sticks or getting the puck out of harm's way. So, you do got to give some credit to Florida for not allowing Toronto to get those opportunities as well. All right. On the other side, Dave, we'll go through the good, the bad, and the ugly and tee up game 3, which will be on Sunday as well. But before we get into all that, Dave, let me tell you about one of today's show sponsors, and it's eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit, ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. Leafs with a 3-2 loss to the Florida Panthers. They find themselves down 0-2 in the best of 7. Not a place the Maple Leafs want to be. They're only 4-17 all time when they fall 0-2 in a best of 7 series. So they're going to have to climb themselves out of it, and it's got to start ASAP if they want to continue on this season. Before we get into game 3, though, let's put a little bow on game 2 with something that we do after every single loss. After the wins, all good, all happy. 3 stars of the game. But after a loss, we go through the good, we go through the bad, and we go through the ugly of the game. So let's start with the good, though. Dave, give me something that you liked that was pretty good about the game.
I mean, just the fact that the Leafs are getting quality looks on the net, right? I thought that was maybe William Nylander's best game, I would say, of the playoffs, minus not scoring, because he
Best,
looked dangerous.
best game or best period?
Yeah, maybe best period, especially third period. Like,
That's the problem with William Nylander
I
though,
know.
because the third period, the guy looked like Connor McDavid,
Oh,
like
I know.
legitimately, like just absolutely dangling through people, putting it through their stick, putting it through their legs, getting around them, taking it to the net. I'm like, where was this guy at puck drop?
I know. So yeah, maybe the fact that when the Leafs needed or down, he didn't give up. He was the one trying to will this team and try to get them that one goal that they needed. So yeah, I would say yeah, one period. I would have liked to have seen it earlier. I know he was getting a lot of flack for the turnover on the second goal.
Yeah,
It was a decent play by Duclair, like to strip him there, and like he was skating into three guys in the neutral zone. It was in the neutral zone too. Wasn't as bad as the Mitch Martin one, which I know we'll get to a little later. But yeah, like I just think that William Nylander needs to come a lot earlier, right? Like I think if that William Nylander comes out in the first period, especially when the Leafs are dominating that first period, like that's not a 2-0, 2-1 game after the first period. That's likely a 3-4, nothing or 4-1 lead after the first period.
yeah, because then they let Bobrovsky settle in because he didn't look very settled to start the game.
No.
Obviously, allowed 2 goals in the first like 6 minutes of the game. Um, but yeah, like that was mine as well. I mean, the start was really good. The Leafs got off to a perfect start. They were buzzing. They scored early, right? They get that goal off the rebound, and then they end up getting another one on the power play with Ryan O'Reilly. All of a sudden, they're up 2-0, like 6, 7 minutes into the game here. I would literally tweeted this out, which maybe that was the turning point. But
Mhm.
I tweeted out, I'm like, this feels eerily similar to game two. They came out like rock stars and scored early, got another goal, and next thing you knew, it was 2-0 quick. And then by the time the end of the period rolled around, it was 3-0, and the Leafs felt great about themselves. After they allowed those 2 goals, Florida allowed those 2 goals, though, they kind of got their legs underneath them and they got back into the game. And it was just a really nifty play, to be honest, by Reinhardt behind the net. Really, really smart pass. A
Yeah.
little backhander, just kind of put it in front. And like Samsonov didn't even know. Like he thought he was taking it around the net. Reinhardt was like, "Nah, I'm just gonna toss it out in front for Lundell, who bangs it in." And it was 2-1, and that's kind of how the period ended. But it was a good start. Just got to make sure that they finish well and keep her going throughout the entire 60 minutes. And then yes, I did also have William the third, who was just buzzing. He was great last night. In particular in that third period, and you could tell too because Sheldon Keefe was getting him extra shifts, getting him out there with the fourth line, getting him out there, sometimes with Austin Matthews. He played a lot in that third period, and Sheldon Keefe knew, all right, Willie's feeling it. Let's get him on the ice as much as possible. So, unfortunately, to your point, didn't result in any goals. Not for a lack of trying, and not for a lack of really quality looks. Just there was a couple times that he got unlucky and hit a post, and a couple times where Bobrovsky came up big, and unfortunately, they got to find a way to beat that guy. And probably 60 minutes of that type of effort, you'll be able to beat him more often. All right, what was bad, Dave?
Yeah, let's go with the turnovers. The
Mm,
two turnovers that led to the Florida Panthers getting winning the game, pretty much, right? Like the Nylander one was brutal. What was more brutal was the goal that Samsonov gave up. Like I didn't like that goal at all. Like when
yeah,
you have Sergei Bobrovsky pulling out the Patrick Waugh, effort, you cannot give up a goal like that. And it was similar. Remember, I mean, we remember Game 5 in Toronto
the
where he
Izemont
gives
goal.
right eerily similar, where it's an innocent looking shot, and Samsonov is just looking skyward. So I didn't like that. But I mean, the Mitch Marner one, I was ready to scream. Like as soon as he made that pass, he's passing it backwards in the offensive zone. He's not like he has a chance to either skate it up or chip it out, and he decides to pass it back. And I'm like, like ready to scream Mitch, because exactly where that play is going to go. Those plays never really end well, And it's those cute little plays that cost teams in the playoffs. When you make those, like when you're trying to make those cute plays, it rarely works. And then Austin Matthews was then put in a tough situation where he decides, I'm going to do what Mitch Marner should have done, which was try to chip the puck out or get the puck out, and he hits the Panthers guy, and then it was chaos all over again.
But he, like, yeah, I don't know, man. He was trying to be too cute with it. It wasn't
They
like,
both were trying to be too cute with it. It was
oh,
a shared cuteness that had gone wrong, and like if I don't know like how Sheldon Keefe. I mean, Kyle Dubas was blowing a gasket up in the press box, but I don't know how Sheldon Keefe wasn't laying it into both of them.
well, I mean, post game, he was asked, like, what'd you make of the start of that second period? Like, they allowed 2 goals in the first minute 6 of the second
Yeah,
period. Like, you would think coming out of the second, you're up 2-1, okay, chance to try and build off that. Next thing you know, minute 6 into the period, you're down 3-2. What the hell? And Sheldon Keefe was asked about that, and he said, baffling. He said it was baffling, the
yeah,
fact that, they came out so flat and were making uncharacteristic errors that they just weren't doing in Tampa. Like, as poor as they played in Tampa, they weren't doing that, right? They weren't trying to get too cute out of their own end. They were just, playing with detail, playing efficient, and just getting the puck out. Like
yeah,
that's what you got to do. And you're right. Like Marner puts Matthews in a bad spot, and then Matthews again tries to get cute with it, and ends up turning the puck over, and next thing you know, it's in the back of the net by Gus Forsling. Like Forsling should not be scoring goals here
no.
on Toronto. So my bad was Samsonov. Like I didn't think that he had a particularly good night. He got beat on the first goal. I suppose he wasn't really. He thought that Reinhart was going to take it around the net, so he was kind of peeking the other way, and Reinhart sends it out in front. Lundell scores. Okay, I guess really good play by Sammy. But those 2 goals that we just discussed, he's got to have both of them.
Yeah.
Both of those goals. Neither of them, the second or the third goal, really should go in. He's got to have both of those saves. And especially when the guy on the other end is playing the way that he has, you got to come up and make a couple of big stops too. Like that's your job as the goaltender, is to be the stopper, and you have to match what the guy on the other end is doing and exceed it, really, if you're going to try and win a playoff game. He didn't do that tonight. I thought he had a pretty poor effort. Um, how much longer you think of a leash does Samsonov have, though? That's a couple games here now where it's been a little, and he looked so rattled, by the way, in the second period.
Well, and you heard,
Rattled.
yeah,
Like, he was swimming. There was a one sequence in the second period. I don't know how the hell the Panthers didn't score. They got so unlucky. They hit a couple posts and missed the net a couple times. But Samsonov was just flopping like a fish all over the place. He was unsettled. The feet were moving. He was didn't even know where the puck was. Seemed like he was a full second behind wherever the puck was going. There was even the one time where they just, like, I don't know, there was just a little fluttering shot that was on goal, and Sam just went to go and grab it with his glove to just try and stop the madness and get a whistle, and he missed it. He whiffed at it. It was just like a little pitch up to his glove, and he just kind of whiffs at it, and luckily it goes off the post. I'm like, dude, this guy can't even catch like a routine pop fly shot at him. Like, what is going on here? It was a weird, like, it looked like you or I were playing goal. Just how unsettled and unsure and uncoordinated he looked at a certain point there in that second period, about midway through, that I thought things were going to go down off the rails real quick. Somehow the puck stayed out of the net. And then I guess he kind of settled things a little bit toward the end of the period and then in the third. But there was stretches of that game where Samsonov, it wasn't pretty, man. The Ilya of Washington showed up in that second period.
yeah. I know. I thought if one of those chances had gone in, maybe you would have seen him being pulled. And you're asking me how worried I am. Like the least margin for error is very, very. It's almost like nothing right now. And like you're gonna probably go to Samsonov in game 3, but it's if he has a bad start or a bad goal, like you do wonder if things sort of if that doubt starts to creep in, and who's the one that gets the call, right? Because it's Joseph Wool right now as the backup. Matt Murray is the third goaltender. I don't think it's Matt Murray that gets in just because he hasn't really been. Just because he hasn't
I
played.
don't know, Dave. They brought him in for the playoffs. I would
I
not.
will say this: the last time Matt Murray played the Panthers, it didn't go too bad for him. I'm just saying, but I'm also I just don't know if that's such a drastic change that you have to be almost certain that the guy you're putting in, you have the utmost confidence is going to do better than Samsonov. And I think game 3 you're going to give it to Samsonov, but if he has a similar effort again, I don't know how you don't consider making a change.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see what happens there. Ugly, Dave. What was ugly?
Sam Bennett, like, can
Oh,
we, like, I know, like, that was ridiculous. I don't want to hear anybody say that's playoff hockey. That's not hockey. I was talking to a few buddies of mine, like they're like that's like men's league goon BS what
yeah.
he did last night. Not just the Matthew Nyes play. And it's not even because it was Matthew Nyes that annoyed me. It's because it's away from the play, unsuspecting opponent. It's all the things that got Michael Bunting that 3-game suspension, and you're telling me that won't warrant any sort of discipline from player safety? Player safety. Trying to keep your players safe when a guy is unsuspecting and gets rock bottomed in a hockey game, that's not safe play. I don't understand how nobody is thinking, how there's people who actually think that does not warrant supplemental discipline. Also, the guy cross checks Michael Bunting in the face, well, back of the neck, and then decides, you know what, I'm getting a penalty anyways. Why don't I give him a nice shot to the spine kidney area? Like, that is trash hockey, and you know what? It's not going to change unless this player safety gets involved, a fine or something. Like if Sam Bennett gets nothing, and we're recording this at about 10 o'clock, 10:20 in the morning, so we haven't heard anything yet. Likely, you don't hear about those things until later in the day. If nothing happens, you're basically saying that what he did last night was justified, and I think that would be a load of baloney.
Well, I think Sheldon Keefe was kind of campaigning to get a some sort of supplemental discipline for Bennett last night because he noted, hey, that cross check on Michael Bunting was eerily similar to the one that Matthews took a seat for in the outdoor game when he cross checked Darlene in the neck. So he's definitely didn't mince words when he said that, and he's angling at something. I'll say this though, it looks as though, based off of a tweet from Chris Johnston,
Yeah.
TSN Hockey Insider says it's unlikely though that Bennett does get suspended for either play. But like, I wonder. I know that they don't do this because all plays are separate. But if you put those two together, like it's got to be worth a game. Like on separate incidents, maybe not.
Yeah.
If you put those together, it's like you just don't want that type of stuff in the game. You know what I mean? Like I know it's not going to happen, but it's like he had a dirty game. He should sit out a game. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Yeah, I had the same thing as my ugly man. That was just gross. And hopefully Matthew Nyes is okay. There was no update last night when coach spoke, but didn't return to the game. So obviously that's not a positive sign. But yeah, that wasn't cool from Sam Bennett, and he's quickly becoming a big time villain in this series. So someone's got to deal with him though. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's
Like
also true.
realistically, someone's got to challenge him. Whether it's
Luke
Luke
Shen.
Shen, maybe Luke Shen get after him, maybe perhaps like someone's got to challenge him, and Jake McCabe could do it as well.
Mhm.
And let him know, like, hey, man, we don't appreciate that type of stuff. All right, guy, Matthew, nice.
And let me just say, people say let's bring in Wayne Simmons. That's not
Well,
that's not the answer either. You're down 2-0 in the series. The last thing you should be worrying about is getting revenge. Let the guys who are going to contribute and be contributors throughout the game, let them deal with that. But I do think like Luke Shen or somebody on that team has to go to Sam Bennett. If nothing happens, if the player safety doesn't do anything, if
take
I'm
it
the
in your
Leafs,
own
I'm
hands.
thinking, okay, we're going to take our own justice. And I'm not saying do anything dirty. Challenge a guy to drop the gloves. Sam Bennett will drop the gloves, and you
Yeah.
challenge him to do that, and you make him accountable for what he did.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Well said, my guy. Speaking of maybe some adjustments for game three, let's take a break. When we come back, let's tee it up. It's coming up this Sunday, not Saturday, but Sunday. So 2 days off before we get to see the Leafs and Panthers again. A couple more days for the Leafs to shake their heads a little bit and get it going. So we'll tee up that game on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Listen to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. I've got Dave Morassutti, my co-host, alongside me today. Leafs heading down to Florida for Game 3. They find themselves in a bit of a pickle. Down 2-0 in a best-of-7 series. Now have to win 4 of the next 5 games to book their spot in the conference final. It is very disappointing. It is very frustrating, the situation that they find themselves in, especially since you could say that Toronto maybe deserved to win game 2 outside of a bad 5 minutes to start the second period. But unfortunately, it's not the world we live in, right? Expected goals mean nothing in the playoffs. Actual goals is how you tally up the score and who says who wins which game. And Florida, unfortunately, has scored more actual goals in 2 games than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Going into Game 3 this weekend, Sunday night in Florida, 6:30 puck drop. By the way, not 7, 6:30. Also weird, but anyways, it's must win for the Maple Leafs. Like must win.
Yeah, no, it is a must win because you don't want to. They right now, Florida is smiling. They're laughing at Toronto. They're enjoying themselves, and they know that if they win Game 3, they have every reason just to empty the tank in Game 4. Right. So if you're the Leafs, it's funny that they play better on the road. They're 1-4 in games at Scotiabank Arena during the playoffs.
Reno
So
on the road.
So, like, does that should that's why I'm not panicking too much because the Leafs do play better on the road. They're a lot more detail oriented. I don't know what the heck that is leading to that, but I think the road. I think this. I mean, they're gonna get a few days here, thanks to I don't know. I've hearing like the Derby could be a reason why. I'm not gonna make excuses for the NHL here, but
There's a bunch of reasons why the Derby, the Miami Heat, they're worried that if the Heat play, they won't have fans in Florida, and also ESPN and TNT.
also now they're worried about not having fans in Florida. Now they're worrying about it. Okay, yeah, okay.
Because then they know that the Leaf fans are going to travel well and take up all the tickets.
I can't wait to see if that's going to be a sea of blue. I still like Paul Maurice kind of said after the game, like, do you see all the Ontario license plates in the Florida area, like in
No,
that area?
dude,
It's
that's
happening anyways. But I think right now, like the Leafs had the start you wanted in Game 2. You got off to a 2-0 lead. You had Florida on the ropes. But the thing you can't do is you can't give them any reason to think that they're in the game, right? And it's again, it's you got to start learning from those mistakes. If the Leafs are not going to learn from those mistakes, yeah, the series is likely not going to go the distance. And that's troubling to think because the Leafs have done exactly what you wanted them, which is control the play, get those great chances in the high danger areas. But we got to start seeing results, and it's got to come from the big boys, right? Like those are the guys that have to step up if they want to extend this series. Because
yeah,
Kerfoot scores, that's great. You get a goal from Kerfoot. O'Reilly scores on the power play. Now it's time for the other guys to start producing, especially at 5-on-5.
yeah. I'm looking at Mitch. I'm looking at Austin.
Whereas,
Tavares, and I mean Willie had a great game, a great third period. He's got to do that from puck drop, right?
yeah,
Like, he just needs to be able to go out there. That's what's so frustrating about this team, though, because you watch them in the third period, and it's like, well, okay, where was this the whole damn game? Like, where was this level of dominance? That's the most dominant that they've looked outside of Game 2 against Tampa the entire playoffs, the whole playoffs. It's like, okay, Where has this been? Why are you waiting until the third period to flip this switch? Flip this switch from game drop from the start of the game from puck drop and get going. You know what I mean? Like it is frustrating to see the skill level and the talent that is within this group, but their propensity to just shut it off and then turn it back on whenever they want is just so frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
They got to, at this point, though, you would think with their backs up against the wall, down 0-2 in the series, head into Florida, that should be motivation enough to flip that switch come puck drop. You think, at least.
Yeah.
So hopefully that is the case. But because they need their big boys to start playing, and they got to get a save from Samsonov, right? Samsonov, yes, there's a couple of turnovers there, and they're putting him in a bad spot to have to make some stops. But ultimately, he also is going to have to bail out his guys every now and then. And last night he didn't do a very good job of that. So that's something that needs to certainly get cleaned up ahead of game 3 as well. Um, Question for you though, Dave,
Mhm.
and this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I mean, if they end up losing this thing, and like let's say they get swept, but they lose in 5, does that undo like all that first round success? Like
Yeah,
all the
1000%. I was thinking about this on the way home. It means nothing if you get swept. What, you won the first round just to get swept in the second round? Like, people were thinking about that with like, oh, congratulations, Leafs, you win the first round just to get swept by the Bruins in the second round. So now it's going to be like if it, imagine you tell someone that the Panthers could potentially sweep the Leafs, that make you sick to your stomach. It like no, I don't think it's progress at all because it's just you beat Tampa, a team that many thought they should be able to beat, and then they have an easier matchup on paper in the second round, and you don't get the job done. No, that would be if the Leafs don't get it done, it doesn't change a thing for me because that would just be even more embarrassing because you know what people are going to be talking about if the Leafs don't pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, it still shows a lack of killer instinct. Like you've
Hmm.
got a team that's worse than you on the ice, and you're unable to put them away. It's a lack of focus, even from the group. Like winning 4 games isn't anything. You got to win 16 to really be
Exactly.
considered a championship team, right? So. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like, man, it's so unfortunate. We celebrated hard, last weekend, and everyone was so excited that they made it through to the second round for the first time in 19 years, and then to go out and go down 0-2 in the second round, it's like, what the hell? Like, what was the point of even winning? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely has left a sour taste in the mouths of a lot of Leafs Nation, but chance to get back on the saddle and try and cut that lead in half on Sunday, and then maybe again on Wednesday, and try and come back to Toronto with a nice even split. All right, Dave, that does it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Lockdown Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Please leave a like on this video. Leave a comment down below. Are you panicking? Is there panic setting in within Leafs Nation? I want to know down below. Also, if you could subscribe to the show as well. New content coming out each and every day, Monday through Friday. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. We'll recap game number 3. Enjoy it. Go Leafs, go. But until then, keep it locked right here on Lockdown Leafs.